Yeah, hi everyone, Mr. Quick here. In today's video I'm going to show you how to construct histograms and frequency tables from some data. Before I go into the specifics of that, I just want to talk a little bit about what frequency tables are. And I've just taken the key idea section here from the textbook again. I'll go through these dot points with you guys, and hopefully it makes a little bit more sense. So basically it's a data display. A frequency table shows shows the number of values within a set of categories or class intervals. And numerical data is a really good one for illustrating or showing in histograms. So essentially the height of the column corresponds to the frequency of the values in the class interval. So the higher the columns are, the more data in that class interval, or in that particular class interval. We'll look at what a class interval is in a minute. There's usually no gaps between the columns, so you can see here there's no gaps in between these columns, and that's the difference between a histogram and a column graph. Okay, it says here the scales are evenly spread, with each bar spreading across the boundaries of the class intervals. So, for example, here the class intervals are 5, or groups of 5. So at this point 60, at this point 65. And you can see that the bars sort of go across that whole way, and that those class intervals are going up in a uniform manner. So we're not going up by a different value each time. We're going up by, you can see there, we're going up by 5 each time. Okay, that's really important. The other type of histogram you can show is a percentage frequency histogram. And basically, rather than just showing the frequency on the y-axis, you've got the percentage frequency on the y-axis. But you can sort of see that the histograms, basically look the same sort of shape anyway. Okay, so maybe it might be to do with how much room. Basically, the frequency will correspond with the percentage frequency anyway. All right. So when you do get a set of data, you can put it into a frequency table, and then use that frequency table to draw your histogram. So this, it doesn't say what this frequency table represents or what the data represents, but it might say, it might be that a percentage of a test, so or a test out of 100. These are the scores. So it says 3 people got a score between 60 and up to 65. 4 people got a score of between 65 and up to 70. 6 people between 70 and 74. 8 people between 70 and 79, and then 4 people between 80 and 85. Alright, so depending on what the data actually is, but numerical data is a good one to display on histograms. Before you can do a histogram, you need to put the data into a frequency table. And before I go any further, I'll just talk about this here. So skewed or symmetrical. So data, when it's displayed in histogram, could be skewed or symmetrical. And I've got a few examples here of what a histogram might look like. So basically, when your histogram has a nice uniform shape to it, what we call the bell curve, we say it's symmetrical. Okay, if most of your data's at one end of the scale, so you can see that here in this first example where it says skewed left, most of the data's at the top end. In the second example, most of the data's at the bottom end. We can say it's skewed. Okay, now it says here skewed left, skewed right. I would actually say this is negatively skewed. Okay, and this is positively skewed. Okay, so there are other terms we can use. At this stage for my year 9s, we're just going to be talking about whether data is skewed or symmetrical, right? Depending on how that histogram looks. One other feature I guess I want to point out before I go into an example is that I know I said there's no gaps in between the columns, but essentially there could be. So this histogram here is kind of showing international visitors to SA, to South Australia, between the years 2000 to 2009. So it's saying that between 300 and 310 visitors happened twice in 2 years. Between 310 and 320 it didn't occur at all. So that's why there's a gap there. That's representing a value of 0. So no instances where between 310 and 320 visitors or international visitors came to South Australia in those years, at least anyway. Okay, so there can be a gap. Don't leave that class interval out or that class interval out just because there's no data there. It's important to have those class intervals and leave them blank. That's the only time I guess you will see a gap between the columns, okay, because it's actually representing a data value of 0. All right. Now let's go ahead. I know I've been talking for a while. Let's go ahead and get into an example straight from the textbook. Again, my year 10s. I've already set up a frequency table here and a bit of an axis for the histogram to go in. So basically, I'm going to go through this example 15. The data below shows, I'm reading from here now, guys. The data below shows the number of hamburgers sold each hour by a 24-hour fast food store during a 50-hour period. So there's 50 data sets here. Okay, so quite a lot of data. What we're going to do is question A, set up and complete a group frequency table using class intervals of 0, 5, 10, etc. Include a percentage frequency column. So my class intervals are going to start from 0 onwards up until 5 onwards, 10 onwards, 15 onwards, and 20. I think between 20 and 25 is actually final. And then we're going to what we'll do is we'll put the total down the bottom here as well. We know as it was, all these numbers should up to 50 because there's 50 data points here. So how many times or for how many hours were between 0 and up to 5 burgers sold in an hour? I've got this data here already, but essentially what you'll need to do is look and see how many times there's 1, 2, 3, and that's it. So we put a 3 in here. Alright, and then we move on to the next one, which is between 5 and up to 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, and that's how you get your data into your frequency table. Now I've done the rest, so I can just fill it out here. And I know, of course, that all these numbers add up to 50. Alright? And that's one way of making sure that you've included each data point. Now, to work out the frequency or the percentage frequency, what you need to do is it's the frequency here divided by the total times by 100. So I'm going to do that for each one. Let's do it over here. So let's get rid of that. Let's do so. The percentage frequency for the first class interval is 3 divided by 50 times by 100. In this case, 6%. For the next, it's 7 divided by 50 times by 100. Okay, you put that on a calculator. That one will be 14%. Okay, the next one will be 30%. Again, I've done this already, guys. The next one will be 38%. And 12%, giving us a total, of course, of 100%. Alright. Once you've done that, you can actually then go ahead and set up your histogram. When you draw it, make sure you've got enough room and set up your scale so that you can fit all this information in. It says here for part B, construct a frequency histogram. So it's not saying percentage frequency, it's just saying frequency. So I'm going to use the values from the frequency column here. I'm going to start with the class intervals. Let's put them down the bottom. So obviously starting at 0, 5, over to 10, 15, 20, 25. As I said, I've sort of planned ahead, so I know this. I'm going to go up by a frequency of 3. Okay, so I worked it out. That's how I want to do it. You can go up by 2s, you can go up by 1s. As long as it's a uniform increase on your scale, that's fine. 18 and 21. Okay, so now I'm going to look at my frequency column. Again, the first class interval, frequency of 3. So I'm going to draw a column up to 3. Hopefully you guys have got a ruler. Yours will be a little bit neater than mine. The next column is going to be up to 7. So I kind of have to estimate here, but it's going to be about there. Okay, and then 15. Alright, and 19. And then 6 for the final one. And there you have it. Histogram for this data. Don't forget, label your axes. So I've got here the class intervals down the bottom. You might actually label that with the title class intervals. You might want to call it. What is it actually representing? Remember, it's representing the number of hamburgers sold each hour, or hamburgers per hour. Okay, and across the y-axis, I'm going to have the frequency. Alright, and there you go. Now, the final question there is actually asking me to actually take some information from, if you can see that well, guys, from the frequency table or the histogram that I've calculated, I've drawn. It says here, how many hours did fast food store sell fewer than 10 hamburgers? So fewer than 10, I'm just looking at these two class intervals. Okay, they're both fewer than 10, so there's the 10 obviously there, so fewer than that there's 3 plus 7, which is 10. Okay, not to be confused with 10 hamburgers. So there were 10 hours where they sold less than 10 hamburgers each hour. And then less than 15 hamburgers, so here's the 15 class interval. I'm just going to add that 15 to the 10 I've already got. So for this, the answer is 10. For this one, my answer will be 3 plus 7 plus 15, okay, which is 25. So there you guys have it. Hopefully that helps. Like I said, use it as a bit of blueprint. Go back, pause the video when you need. And yeah, if you're in my class, got any questions, please come and talk to me. Apart from that, everything else should be up on Daymat for you.